Hiya, welcome back to ETD React. Leo we are doing something different. Kuna stuff fulani hapo, it was the campus students who stole. Actually, wacha tuone hii story jo. Now how long was I wanna be here. Start recording. Wacha tusikie. Campus students who stole 500M from Fuliza majama. Abu tusikie rada ni gani jo.
Guys, wait. Important message.
Guys,
First of all, I'm Rory Reid, and you're watching Auto Trader.
Who gives a fuck?
Here's why.
Life error.
Kali kwa nimeanza mahali.
Of Fuliza scammers in a 449 million heist.
From Fuliza loan theft syndicate.
I mean, you've got to give it to them. This is brilliance of a certain order that I just cannot explain.
Watoka
story. Yes, kushikwa, mnafaa kushikwa. Crime does not pay. Lakini
hafai kushikwa.
About this story. Yes, kushikwa, mnafaa kushikwa. Crime does not pay. Lakini the kind amount of work these people have done.
If you thought 2020
I don't think even
was
it's luck.
about trying to survive the pandemic, think again. Well, the world was reeling from COVID-19 and the crazy new regulations it brought. Over in Bomet County, one young man was stepping into what could be called a soft life era. His name, Gideon Kip-Kurui-Rono, a student from Egerton University. Now, this wasn't just any student trying to get by. This was a kid who, in the middle of a global crisis, pulled off a heist that will set the stage for his biggest hustle yet.
What?
On July 20th, 2020,
alikuwa una vision.
Gideon secured millions of dollars just like that. It was a bag so big, it felt like something straight out of a movie. But here's where it gets wild. This wasn't the end of his success. It was just the beginning.
In the beginning. What? I like this type of things. Story by Inside. Umse mwenye jua amenarrate shit na amechonga. Good job. Good job. Unaweka ni movie music hatutaki kuona hizo vitu
into Nakuru
kidogo.
The very next day, Gideon strolled into Nakuru Equipment Supplies with 143,000 Kenya shillings in cash. No loans, no credit, just pure cash. And made what seemed like a casual purchase. His first ever bike, a Bajaj Boxer Ksh.500M 526E. Now, most people buying bikes in this part of the world are looking for something practical, a workhouse that can earn them some money. But not Gideon. He wasn't buying his bike to work, he was buying it to play. This was a toy, not a tool for survival. But that wasn't the crazy part. Oh no, Gideon wasn't stopping there. 2 months later, on September 2nd, 2020, he was back at it. This time, he'd gotten another check. Another massive check. So what did he do? He walked right back into Nakuru Equipment Supplies, dropped 90,000 Kenya.
Na mbona anarudi kwa hiyo? Kama alikuwa anajua anafanya hiyo yote, angerudi kwa hiyo base bado. Ati bye bye.
Shillings in cold, hard cash, and bought his second bike. Cash, no questions, no hassle. And the seller, completely impressed. He was amazed at how well business was going for this young kid. And why wouldn't he be?
You see, that's the fact. Hapo ndo alikosea. Manze ulipatia hadi the seller akaona kama ati take sijui how many months ndo kakuja amuka bye bye. Ulipea idea ko like hiyo ungeenda tu kwa base ingine.
Was living what seemed like a dream, and everyone around him thought it was all legit. Little did they know the business booming wasn't business at all. In fact, it was all part of a well thought out, carefully executed heist that had just kicked off. This wasn't a lucky streak. It was the Fuliza heist. A
What?
game changer that will leave people questioning how deep the hustle really went. Before we dive into today's story, I want to take a moment to thank all of you for showing us so much love and support. Seriously, we couldn't do this without you.
Bro, you guys
If you
are
haven't
good.
already, make sure to like Hindi
Try
and
subscribe.
you're awesome.
Hi everybody, I'm Grace and welcome to
You started with the arts.
The Fuliza heist isn't just any regular crime. This is one of the most sleek, under the radar identity theft schemes you'll ever hear about. So sneaky, even the victim wouldn't know they'd been played. See, Gideon, coming from Bomet County, had been watching the rise of the infamous Mulot gang. They were making moves, getting rich off their hustle, but there was one problem: the constant fear of getting caught by the cops. And that didn't sit well with Gidi. He wasn't about that life. He needed something smarter, something cleaner. So what did he do? He decided to be different. Picture this. Like a treasure hunter, Gidi went to places in Bomet town where he knew lost ID cards would end up, places where people forgot or abandoned them. And trust me, he didn't just find a couple. He walked away with quite a few. And that's when the real plan started to come together. With these ideas in hand, he wasn't done. Oh no, Gideon took it up a notch and bought a Safaricom Mobigo machine. Now, if you don't know what that is, it's a little piece of tech magic that allowed him to register new phone lines. What did he do with these lines? He opted them all into Fuliza loans, starting in May 2020. And that's when the game really began. Now, here's where things get even crazier. Remember those lost IDs Gidi was collecting? One ID wasn't just good for one SIM card. Oh no, it could register up to 5 different lines. So imagine this, with just 50 IDs, Gidi had 250 SIM cards all registered in his bedsitter. Yeah, it sounds wild, but that's exactly how it went down. With these 250 lines, Gidi wasn't playing around. Each of those numbers were used to borrow a minimum of 300 Kenya shillings from Fuliza. And as soon as the loan was granted, the cash was transferred directly to his number. But
mi kitu inanikatianga about Fuliza ni manzea wase wanakuwekea Fuliza. Unajua kuna ile time jo hautaki kutoa do bank uvute, like this is the unapata jo ulipewa Fuliza jo, alafu tena umeexhaust do. Asa wanaona umekawia sana kufuliza, wanakuongezea do. Mimi sipendi kuongezewa do. Ndatoa hiyo kitu. Inanikatianga.
Here's the thing, Gidi wasn't holding on to this lines for long. Just 2 to 3 days after getting the money, he will dispose of the SIM cards. This became his routine, a process he repeated week after week, stacking up cash. Fast forward to December 2020, and Gidi had enough to buy 2 motorcycles, signaling that the business was ready to go big time. But there was one problem. How was he going to get more ID cards to keep his operation rolling? Well, that's when Gidi had to level up. He couldn't do this alone anymore. So he called in the big guns, some pals to help him scale the hustle. The first person on his list, Isaac Ksh.500M, a third-year student at St. Paul's University, who just so happened to be stuck in Limuru because of the COVID lockdown. But when Isaac had a plan, he was blown away. He couldn't believe how genius it was. So what did he do? He referred Gidi,
to be honest with you, most of us to get
with
what
plans
we
to
call
join
in
them once
this
the lockdown restrictions were lifted. This friend, none other than Mr. Nelson, restrictions were lifted. With plans to join them once the lockdown restrictions were lifted. This friend, none other than Mr. Nelson Kamau, a SIM swap OG who knew the ins and outs of the game. Nelson didn't just stop there. He introduced Gidi to their key connector, Mr. Peter Itahi. Peter wasn't just any IT guy. This dude lived in Trans Nzoia, But more importantly, he had access to the National Registration Bureau, and that access, it allowed him to create falsified identity cards, which was about to take this whole scheme to another level. Now, things were about to get a whole lot bigger. Gidi wasn't messing around anymore. He had his hands on 13 Safaricom Mobigo machines, which allowed him to register even more SIM cards. Each time these cards were registered, Gidi didn't just hold onto them. He sold them directly to himself. This meant his only hassle now was to Fuliza, cutting operational costs by nearly 50%. That's some serious efficiency, right? Having tasted that sweet success, Gidi wasn't about to slow down. He was all in now. Alongside Nelson, they went all on this scheme. They bought more SIM cards, moved the operation to Nakuru, and rented a place in Kiamunyu Estate, a spot that will become their HQ. With their new base of operations set up, they called in some more pals to join the hustle. And this is where the magic happened. They started registering SIM cards into Fuliza, and just like that, the game was in full swing. By the end of 2020, the money was flowing in faster than they could handle. It was clear that this wasn't just a side hustle anymore. It was a full-fledged operation, and Gidi knew it was time to take it to the next level. He needed bank accounts. So, on February 5th, 2021, Gidi walked into Family Bank at the Nakuru branch, armed with a crisp 1,000 note, and opened an account. Simple, right? But what happened next? The account sat there for 3 weeks doing absolutely nothing. That is until February 22nd, when the account suddenly started receiving 90 deposits per day. We're talking amounts ranging from 22,000 Kenya shillings to 100,000 Kenya shillings, all from different M-Pesa numbers. This was the moment things went from
Apple Joe is kind of suspicious even to the bank. Unless angeipiga na vako za ma offshore. Angefungua hadi nini za offshore accounts. That's why angecheza na angeka different
from
banks.
22,000 Kenya shillings to 100,000 Kenya shillings, all from different M-Pesa numbers. This was the moment things went from a hustle to a full-on operation. As the money started pouring in, things got a little too hot to handle. All those transactions hitting one account were bound to raise some eyebrows.
Of course.
Gidi and the crew knew it. The bank would flag them any second now. So what did they do? They decided it was time to clean things up. Time to make things look neater and more professional. The solution, get more accounts. And this time, the dons of the operation needed their own.
You can't expect to see results if you're just walking during the day. Me, lost £15 and 2 pad size.
On March 23rd, 2021, Nelson and Edwin walked into Family Bank and opened their own accounts. But these weren't your typical accounts. No, they were special. These accounts were only meant for deposits, to handle the proceeds from the heist. They didn't need to make withdrawals, not yet. Just keep it clean and organized. Then, in April, Isaac Kipkemoi finally joined the crew. He didn't waste any time and opened his account at Family Bank on May 5th. Fast forward to May 26, and Isaac's account started receiving a flood of deposits, a total of 224 deposits to be exact.
What?
We're talking amounts ranging from 1 to 87,000 Kenya shillings. But here's the real kicker. They weren't just sitting there. This cash was moving in chunks of 200,000 Kenya shillings to different numbers, and from there, it was quickly withdrawn, spreading the money out and making it harder to trace. The operation was running smoother than ever. On July 7th, 2021, Gidi took another big step and opened a Co-op Bank account with just 7,500 Kenya shillings. But this wasn't just any regular account. 3 weeks later, he made a deposit of 1,424,260 Kenya shillings. And how did this happen? Well, the money came through his phone and a total of 9 different numbers. This wasn't just cash. This was a kind of money that signaled they were officially stepping into a new level. It was the beginning of a new status. But Giddy wasn't about to sit on it. On August 4th, they withdrew the entire amount, adding it to his tag to pay for something big. Enter the new ride. Giddy walked into the dealership and bought himself a Subaru Forester KDD. The very next day, on August 5th, he and Isaac Ksh.500M took off for Mombasa. Why? Well, Isaac had just received a cool 1.36 million Kenya shillings in his account, and they were on a mission to get Isaac's own car. His target, a Toyota Mark X, which is secured from Binda Corporation Limited, if I got the name right. Things were moving fast and the crew was stepping up their game. It didn't stop there. Nelson Kamau, the next guy, wasn't going to be left out. That would be insane. On January 24th, 2022, he bought his own Subaru Forester KDG.500M from Muzif Motors after receiving 1.87 million Kenya shillings in his account just days before, on January 20th. Talk about moving with speed. And just 2 days later, Jones got in on the action. He bought his own Subaru KDG from AutoZone Motors after receiving 1.3 million in his account. The whole gang was getting into the luxury ride game, and things were about to go into overdrive. The last duo to join into the millionaire club, Edwin Kipkorir, on February 24th. He walked into CDC Motors and picked up his own Subaru Forester KDG.061R. Just like that, the entire crew was running in style. But Giddy wasn't about to let them have all the fun. He stepped up next, buying a Pro Box, and just like that, the whole gang was officially a group of full-blown millionaires. But here's where things get a little spicy. While the crew was living it up, back at the Fuliza HQ, something wasn't sitting right. They started noticing something strange. These lines that were getting loans were being switched off before they could even make a single call. Something didn't add up, so the alarms went off and the bank reported to the cops. But by then, it was too late. The gang had already hit a point where they were about to rake in even more millions. By August 2022, things finally caught up with the crew. Managers at NCBA Bank, the ones behind the Fuliza loan fund, had started noticing something very suspicious. There was an unusual spike in loan application, and what really set off the alarm? The borrowers weren't paying anything back. In fact, over 123,000 SIM cards had opted into Fuliza, took the loans, and then gone. Just like that. The SIM cards were switched off, and any attempt to reach the user was totally futile. That's when NCBA knew they had a full-blown fraud operation on their hands. So they brought in the heavy hitters, the bank's fraud investigation unit. After tracing the transactions and movements, the trail led them straight to Kiamuni, Nakuru County, the gang's old HQ, and in Trans Nzoia, authorities arrested Peter Gitahi, the tech mastermind behind the fake ID supply. Soon after, the net closed in on the others. 24-year-old Isaac Ksh.500M, 26-year-old Gideon Kipkurui, 24-year-old Maxwell Jambo, 33-year-old Moses Rono, and several others. The crew that once moved in silence was now being escorted to the DCI headquarters for intense interrogation and eventually arraignment. What started as a clever hustle quickly turned into a full-blown criminal operation. And the sad part, these were guys with real potential. Skills that could build apps, started businesses, maybe even transform the digital economy in legit ways. But when greed...
Huyu jamaa anasema hivyo, na to be honest pia yeye angetaka kwa hiyo heist, angekuwa tu. Where do you apply? You apply where you see it's more convenient. But what they actually did wasn't right.
takes over, it clouds your judgment. It convinces you that shortcuts are better than hard work. until the whole thing crashes. This isn't just a story about fraud. It's about how technology can be used and misused. It's a reminder that even the smartest among us can fall when driven by the wrong motives.
Yep.
And that true success, it's not found in stolen cash or flashy rides. It's found in building something real, something that lasts. So whether you are grinding, creating, or coding, just remember, the long road might take more time, but it leads to a future you don't have to run from.
Yeah,
remember,
true facts.
prison is filled with people who thought they could beat the system. Nairobi Insight.
Bro, shout out to Nairobi Insight. Shout out to Nairobi Insight. To be honest with you, I love the documentary. Kabisa. Na mimi kile mimi naweza sema tu, hii life, let's not all be fooled by social media. People are living sijui aje, tena pia utaki kufanya whatever wao nafikiria wanafanya and yet hawafanyi. Probably wanafanya hivi, probably they are living a fake life. Bro, usichochwe. Wewe kama unaona journey yako ina take long, wacha take long jamaa. Saa zingine sio wote tunafaa kuomoka. Ile ukweli tu.